Welcome, everybody, to this latest edition of the Silver Screen Action Figure Podcast. This is your host, Andre Joseph, and today we're going to be talking about one of the biggest blockbusters of all time, which also spawned a massively successful action figure and vehicle and playset toy line, and that is Steven Spielberg's 1993 epic Jurassic Park. And it also spawned a number of sequels, also with their own established toy lines. And joining me today to talk about it is my usual partner in crime, Mr. Albert Albanese. Say hello.
Hey guys, what's up? Nice to be here again.
And also returning from our previous Ghostbusters podcast is a fellow Jurassic Park fan, as well as a fan of the novelist Michael Crichton, Coast Blog's own Marcos Cosme. Say hello.
Hey guys, what's going on? Glad to be back.
All right, fantastic. So let's go back to 1993, fellas. This was an interesting summer. As I remember, you had a couple of big films that were coming out that time that I actually was pretty hyped up about. There was the Super Mario Brothers movie, and there was Arnold Schwarzenegger in Last Action Hero, both of which... Yeah. And who knew how bad they were going to be once they came out? And weirdly enough, I bought the toys for those, which I will talk about in a later podcast. But Jurassic Park, I never knew anything about this novel. I knew nothing about Michael Crichton. 1993, I think I was 9 years old, and I was still on the Batman craze because Batman Returns had come out. Aladdin was big, so everybody bought the video game. Everybody bought the action figures from it. And I was still maybe at the tail end of Ninja Turtles, starting to phase out of that, and getting into the comic book phase, because at that time, Saturday mornings you had Batman the Animated Series and you had X-Men. So basically it was like the comic book kick for me. And I remember being in a Kmart, probably this must have been the early part of 1993 or so, maybe around the spring. And I see these action figures for something called Jurassic Park. Now, I knew nothing about the Michael Crichton novel. I knew nothing about this upcoming movie. But these figures look pretty damn cool, I mean, it was Kenner. They were the size of the Batman figures. They all came with a trading card, which, if you look back at it now, they look like storyboards from the movie. And I remember begging my mom to buy the set of all the human figures. And she wouldn't want to buy it. It was already expensive enough. They must have been $4.99 a piece. And I kept begging her to the point where I said, look, this is good for my education, deal with dinosaurs. And, this is really going to be good. I'll be into history now. So
got to do it any way you can.
Exactly. So, eventually she relented and she bought the figures. And again, I just had them, but I didn't know what they were about. And then the trailer hit. And holy shit, now we're seeing this movie with dinosaurs coming back to life. And here's Steven Spielberg, who, obviously with Indiana Jones and all these other classics and Jaws and Close Encounters, he's directing this movie. This was unlike anything I'd ever seen before as a kid. And then shortly enough, once I saw the movie, it knocked my socks off. So I guess for you guys, when did you first learn about the film and when did you first learn about the toys?
I think for me, I remember driving around, it was my parents driving because I was way too young at that point in time, seeing billboards of just the logo on a black background. And I was with my parents and my mom was like, I wonder what that is. We had no idea it was for a movie, for anything. And and then more words started coming out oh my God, you have to go see this in a good movie theater. I had not seen any toys or any commercials for this thing, so we went to go see it in the theater, and I was blown away. I'm like that was amazing. I didn't even know it was based on a book until the end credits, where you actually see it go based on a film by Michael Crichton. And that's pretty much where it began, the love affair of those types of films. I love dinosaurs from when I was younger, but that blew it up for me, being able to see living, breathing creatures, for the first time. That was it for me.
Yeah, honestly, for me, it was maybe about right after the movie had hit HBO, because I didn't really go to the movies much as a kid. My mom is not a big fan of the movies, which is a very weird thing to not be a fan of. But she's never been a fan of going to the movies. So as a kid, there wasn't many that I saw in the theaters, but I do remember one day watching it with my just like flipping through HBO, and then like this movie came on. There was these big giant dinosaurs. So me and my younger sister were watching it, and it became one of our like favorite movies, just because of the obviously the first scene where when they first get on the island, where the guy is in the bathroom and gets eaten by the giant T-Rex, and we all just, the two of us started laughing because you got to eat while he was taking a dump. We're kids. So from there on out, like we were kind of like really we watched the movie pretty often. So and she always loves this scene where is that the brontosaurus, or is it, I can't remember which dinosaur it is, when they sneeze in the girl's face. That always made my sister laugh.
Yeah, that was a brontosaurus.
Yeah, that's it.
Brachiosaurus. Brontosaurus has actually never existed.
Really?
Oh, all right. Well, see, this is why you're here, Marcos.
Brontosaurus was the body of I don't even know if it was a brachiosaurus, but it was a long-necked dinosaur, and they never found the head. So an archaeologist, when they discovered it, just attached another head to it and called it a brontosaurus.
Interesting.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure what, if some sort of sauropod, but I'm not entirely sure which one it was, but that's what a brontosaurus was.
Well, there you go. So it was that one. But yeah, that's how I kind of like first heard about the movie.
Yeah, so when these figures came out, again, they came out a couple of months before the film was released, and then once it came out, they flew off the shelves. I mean, it was just a massive phenomenon, and as we all know, the movie was #1 for pretty much the whole summer and would end up becoming one of the top grossing movies of all time. A record that's been broken a lot since then, but certainly in the 90s, it was just a groundbreaking picture between the combination of really showing how far CGI had become and the stop motion and puppeteering work that guys like Phil Tippett and Stan Winston were able to put together for the movie. It was really remarkable. Now, with the figures, the funny thing about it was that even though the initial toys didn't have the exact likenesses of the actual actors, it was kind of weird in the sense that when it came to the human characters, now Kenner had the Alien toy line, and that was already huge in itself, and each character having like their weapons based on the second Alien film by James Cameron. And for some odd reason, they decided to go overkill with the accessories on some of these guys. Take for instance, I'm going to be probably ragging on this one, but the Dennis Nedry character, the guy that played Newman on Seinfeld, Wayne Knight, I think it was.
And was it?
Yeah, his figure, the first one, he looks like a hitman. I mean, it looked nothing like him in physical shape. They give this guy like a gun holster and this like tranquilizer spray gun, which I guess if you put water in it, it could like spray down dinosaurs and make them fall asleep or disintegrate or whatever. And even the game warden character Muldoon, he has like a missile launcher, which he never used in the film.
Yeah, I'm currently looking at the Dennis Nedry figure, and for a hot second in the thumbnail, I thought someone had put a Terminator one on there, and then when like you click in, it's like, oh, he never wore sunglasses. He looks a little too cool for this. Like this looks like one of the handlers that would have been putting the raptor into its cage at the very beginning. Like that's what this looks like.
Yeah, I'm looking at it too. It is a weird looking figure and you're right. The Robert Muldoon character with the giant, this giant like RPG launcher, like out of nowhere.
Yeah,
like some very weird choices for weaponry and looks for some of these guys.
Yeah, and then the Nedry figure, I mean, not only did I think originally that it was the Jeff Goldblum, Ian Malcolm character, which obviously it was, and they would make a figure for him in the next set, which we'll talk about, but then his arms were able to detach. that was like the strangest thing because I thought when I first took him off, I thought it was completely broken until I put it back
Wait,
on.
Who?
The Dennis Nedry figure.
His arms had come off?
Yeah, his arms could actually detach, even though in the movie that never happens. He just gets spit on by the spitter, and then he gets killed in the Jeep. But that,
Right.
I don't know if they were like trying to make the figures based on the book
Yeah.
originally or what.
So I mean, maybe is there a possibility that
Sorry.
that
I'm
actually
coming
happened
in.
in the book that his character's arm got ripped off? I'm not sure. I never read the book, so I'm thinking maybe that could be a possibility. But it is kind of cool to know that they put the work in to rip some guy, like they have these big dinosaurs. Hey, we may as well get, be able to rip these guys' arms off too,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, but they did a good job overall, I think, with the other characters. The Alan Grant figure, the first one that was released, did have some resemblance to Sam Neill. I mean, he looks like a badass, even though he's not really in that kind of shape in real life. And then Laura Dern's character, Ellie Sadler, almost looked identical to how she looked in the movie, even down to the wardrobe. And then each figure came with like a little baby dinosaur. So like Muldoon had a baby raptor, or I think, oh no, baby T Rex, and Grant had a pterodactyl. Sadler had a triceratops. So it was kind of cool. Like at least you had like a little bit of a dinosaur that came with each toy. When it came to the actual dinosaurs, however, now this is a funny thing. My parents flat out refused to buy any of the dinosaur toys. And the reason for that was because when I was a young kid, they had bought this collection of, I guess, like, they might have been Smithsonian type dinosaur toys. Nothing like what was in the movie. I mean, just general basic stuff. Like there was a T Rex, there was a Brontosaurus, there was a Triceratops in it, and that was basically my Jurassic Park dinosaurs to play against those figures. Years later, actually recently, my friend Charlie Cannon from last week's Transformers episode, he actually found a picture of those very dinosaurs, and I was like, "Oh my god, you had those?" And I thought I was crazy, and I was the only one that had these things. I mean, that was like maybe the one disappointment about me as a kid having the Jurassic Park figures was that I could not get a single dinosaur from that movie, not even a T Rex.
So I was never really big into the idea of, I was more into the idea of like, trying to, I don't know, I guess I'm trying to put the best way of putting it is, making my action figures beat the living crap out of each other. So the idea of the dinosaurs was a little bit lost on me, just due to the fact that that's kind of what I wanted. I just wanted like these figures that would, that I could, have them beat the crap out of each other, and then, that was my way of playing. But what I did like was that when I went to my cousin's house, he had some of the dinosaurs, and I would start playing with them, and I was like, oh, these are awesome. They were so cool looking, and they like. I don't know how to describe it, but like the way they felt was like different. Like it felt like they were almost like scaly and stuff like that. Like they did a really good job on like how they were to the touch.
Yeah.
I have a very similar thing. I actually never owned any of the Jurassic Park toys, but I went to my cousin's and he had a good portion of them, and they just felt different compared to any of the other dinosaur toys I had owned up until that point. They did a good job. If they went above and beyond for the movie special effects, they went above and beyond for the dinosaurs in the toy line itself.
Yeah, I mean, they were deadly accurate, and like you said, I mean, just feeling them, like the T Rex, it felt like almost like it could have been flesh from the T Rex. It was unlike anything that had ever been made up until that time, and the fact that you could even battle damage them, so like part of their skin could rip, and you could see their insides. I mean, that was edgy for kids' toys, but still remarkable nonetheless. And they were also really good with the vehicles. They had the Jeep from the movie. They had the Jungle Explorer. And I have those two vehicles. I still have them, and I actually found the Jungle Explorer under my bed recently when I had moved to my dad's a few years ago. And yeah, I mean, they were dead on like the movie. They weren't repaints from another toy line. There was a capture copter which wasn't in the film. I thought it was a repaint from the RoboCop line, but it wasn't. But yeah, I mean they really went all out, and then even the command compound, which I was jealous I never had, but a friend of mine that I went to school with, when I went to his birthday party one year, he had the whole set, even the play set. So you were able to like have the guy.
Really?
Yeah, it was like the little electric fence around like this tower, and inside the tower was like the little computer or command center, like in the film, so you could like track the dinosaurs, turn off the power. It should have come with the
And it could
Samuel L.
stay
Jackson
like over
figure.
100 different places.
Yeah, I think it should have definitely have come with the Samuel L. Jackson figure for sure. I mean, it was that good.
Anything's better with Samuel L. Jackson. Let's be honest.
Oh, without a doubt. So let's jump into the second set of figures that came from this line. So now the film had just come out. It was a huge hit. The demand was high. So Kenner decided they were going to re-release the first set of toys, but now they decided to make them more accurate to the actors' likenesses. So now you not only had trading cards that had still shots from the movie, but now you had like a new Alan Grant that had like a new costume and like this bola launcher. So I guess it's supposed to like rope in the dinosaurs with like a little net. Muldoon looked closer to the actor. The Saddler looked more like Laura Dern in the first figure. Tim Murphy, they cut his hair so he looked more like the kid in the film. They even took the Dennis Nedry figure now. Now they repainted him, but his face looks more like Wayne Knight, and they actually gave him more weight, so he looks actually a lot fatter than the previous figure. But they still make him look like a badass, which never made any sense to me. And we finally got our Jeff Goldblum figure. We got our Ian Malcolm, and that's probably the best figure they've made in the entire series. Period.
Oh, I agree. I think that when they went back and looked at it and realized the popularity, they were like, "Hey, look, let's do the right thing and let's just make these figures look more like they did on screen." We're looking at these kids who are going to try to play with these figures, and they're going to go, "Oh, hey, this is great. This is the guy from the movie." And then you look at it and you go, "Well, that looks nothing like the guy from the movie." So let's go back and let's do the right thing and let's change these guys up and make them look a lot more realistic.
Yeah, I mean, he pretty much came out like the stealing the show in the film. So you had to make a toy of this guy, and down to the facial features, the glasses, his outfit. It was incredible. And unfortunately, I never got that figure from that line, not until Lost World came out, and we'll get into that. But yeah, I mean, it was pretty amazing the way that they were able to get his likeness down. And they continued on with the dinosaurs. I mean, I didn't really talk much about like the raptor figure or the spitter, but those are like more the smaller scale toys, much like how the dinosaurs were a lot smaller in that film. Again, deadly
Actually,
act.
Andre, can we go back to the humans for a second? I just looked it up, and apparently there was a whole line outside of the characters from the film that were out there. So they had like a Sergeant Turner, which was they called T-Rex,
Yes.
Harpoon Harrison, Jaws Jackson, Skinner, and Dr. Snare.
So this was a weird thing that they did. I feel like they were, the movie had like a lot of what scientists and theorists. They weren't like Indiana Jones type. We're gonna kick ass and save the day kind of characters. They were just like regular people in extraordinary situation. So I think it was as if Kenner decided, you know, boys want to have guys fighting each other and fighting dinosaurs. So let's get badass and let's create like a GI Joe type of group of dinosaur hunters, and then these bad guys that are out to take down the dinosaurs. It was very weird. It gave me the theory that maybe they were trying to do a cartoon, and it actually turned out there was a plan for a cartoon series back then, and it never materialized. So I'm wondering if that was the idea.
I could see that.
Which would have been awesome.
And guys, I just sent over Dr. Snare, and he kind of looks like a
I think we lost him a little bit. So I am looking at what he looks like, and he almost looks like a mustacheless Hulk Hogan with a cowboy hat.
He looks like almost like a reject from Swamp Thing, to be honest.
What were you going to say, Marcos? What did you say you think he looked like?
I'm
sorry. I guess Marcos is
Dundee type character.
Oh yeah, I can see Crocodile Dundee.
Yeah,
totally.
totally.
That's pretty much what I envisioned was Crocodile Dundee.
I don't know. I like the mustache with Hulk Hogan better.
Yeah, that's perfect. It's a perfect way to put it. Harpoon Harrison just looks embarrassing.
Oh, totally embarrassing. I mean, the guy looks like a gigolo. Like he's there with his abs, and who thought of this guy?
So weird.
Hold on, Albert. Can you see these?
Yeah.
I just sent the whole list over. Skinner. Like some of these guys look like. I don't know. Skinner kind of reminds me of Fallen Kingdom.
He does, right? One of the villains.
He just looks like an
Aquaman.
Almost like Aquaman. Yeah, like an old rip-off Aquaman.
That Aquaman.
So weird.
I'm sorry for completely derailing and going back to this. It's just I can't believe that they went in that direction with some of these characters. They have good classic characters that they should have just focused with and not gone in this direction. But
I think it was just an excuse to just try to get more milk out of the brand, and they figured let's do a separate thing away from the movie. And I don't know if they were really all that successful with that, because I had no appeal to those guys.
Yeah, I mean they honestly look like a rip-off toy line that you'd find at like a dollar store. Like here are some of the knockoffs that they sent in from overseas, as opposed to actual Jurassic Park toys.
I think you're dead on with that, and even with the dinosaurs too. I mean, they started getting a little cooler with it in the degree that now you had like some of the dinosaurs had like a screaming feature. So there was like a Baronix dinosaur and a Galamalus that could, do some sort of attack motion, and then it would start screaming like it was like a voice control thing. But then they started really getting absurd with adding dinosaurs that were not in the film. There was like a cobra dinosaur. There was like a saber-toothed tiger. And they started repainting like the raptors, and it got a little weird. So they were really trying to like give more into it that people were not used to. I don't know if they were like trying to borrow from the video game that was successful for Sega, or if they were trying to like, again, there was a cartoon being discussed, so maybe these were plans for that. But it was like let your imagination run wild, just like what happened with Ghostbusters, among other toy lines back then.
I mean,
I think that we. Okay, Marcos.
No, go on.
I think a lot of these action figure lines started doing was understanding that if you've collected everything and there's nothing else to release in the meantime because there was no new content, you had to figure out a way to make your own new content in order to keep these toy lines moving. And I think this is a really good example of that, because we're seeing, Kenner release these figures that really have nothing to do with a lot of the movie. And they're like, well, it's because, hey, these are now new extra guys. You can insert them and use your imagination. Pretend that they're in there too, and they're trying to help, rescue everybody or save the day, or maybe one of them's a new villain. I mean, it's cool to have these guys so you can use your imagination, but sometimes it's like, do I really care?
And I believe Transformers has fallen under the exact same thing, where aside from the fact that the movie sucked, they don't have any new versions of Optimus Prime or Bumblebee. Like they didn't have any of those, and the toy lines themselves have been dwindling because of that. And that's one of the reasons why they would kill off some of the Transformers characters and change them and update them so that it would give kids a reason to actually go and purchase more, because the first three movies, they were actually just giving the exact same Transformer over and over again. It's the same Optimus, it's the same Starscream, same Megatron. Like they weren't changing anything out. So I definitely agree with that perspective that they were doing that. Uh, and taking a quick glance at the dinosaurs, I do see that they had a thing called the Utah Raptor, which was a real raptor that came out in around this time. Like they discovered this. It was like a almost like a T-Rex size. Um, they discovered it. I don't want to know. I don't actually know when, but I remember reading articles about it around the time that Jurassic Park came out.
Before I get into Lost World, I just want to also mention another Michael Crichton novel that also had a film not as successful as Jurassic Park. Actually, it wasn't successful at all, but it also had a toy line, and that was 1995's Congo. That was made by some of the same people. Frank Marshall, who produced all the Jurassic Park films, he directed the movie, and Kenner decided they thought this was going to be the next big thing, so they decided to cash in on it. Um, and let me tell you, I didn't collect these toys, but I will say that they were impressive to a degree. You know, these ape characters, including the main uh, heroine character of Amy, they were pretty accurate to the film, and they looked like they were probably a lot of fun to play with. You know, they were really imaginative and certainly captured the likeness of the films. But when it came to human characters, they were kind of like a mixed bag because, you know, the actress Laura Linney, who's basically supposed to be like the main character in the film, they took like a Ripley aliens figure and basically repainted it to be her and just changed the head. But it's the same weapon, the same body mold, and it looks nothing like her. And they try to make her look more like a badass than she was in the movie. But I only want to mention it because, you know, Ernie Hudson was in it. His character was like the badass South African hunter slash explorer, and my God, that figure looks accurate to how he looked in the movie, and it's almost like they took the face of the Winston toy from Ghostbusters and just like gave him more hair, and essentially there you go, you got your Ernie Hudson figure, and he looks really badass.
He looks more badass as an action figure than he does in the movie itself.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Because,
yeah, that's a
because
good point.
I don't
Actually,
remember him ever looking like this, and in fact, I want them to remake the movie based on this.
I would actually be open to that.
Andre, get to work.
Well, I have the contact for his number, but that's another story for another day. All right, so now going back to Jurassic Park. So we have 1997's The Lost World. Um, I remember liking the movie, but not loving it. You know, I only saw it all the way through when it
Same.
first came out in the theater. I don't remember buying it on tape. I don't remember really rewatching it all that much when it was on TV. And the figures were kind of like the same deal. I mean, at first, I think I was a little hyped up because it was the sequel. And so right away, they had a Ian Malcolm figure available in massive quantity. So I had to get that. It was basically the same figurehead from the Jurassic Park line, but now they tried to make him look more badass with the gloves, and he had more like a black bodysuit, and then like different forms, like one with a glider, one that had a smart missile. It was like. Are we trying to make him in the Batman now? He's like the Batman of Jurassic Park. He's got to have all these
Well,
accessories.
they had to find some way to make him look badass, right? So they're like, well, you know what? Who's the most badass in the world? Batman.
Oh yeah.
But it was also kind of weird how like a lot of the human figures in the film, again, most of these guys, like the good guys, were just scientists, documentarians, theorists, and then the bad guys were all these InGen dudes that just wanted to profit off of the island where they're breeding all the dinosaurs. But they take almost all these characters and they're trying to make them look more badass than they were in the movie. Even like the main villains, you know, look nothing like their
Buffalo.
Yeah, Peter Ludlow looked nothing like the Peter Ludlow in the movie. Peter Ludlow was like a big
No.
wimp, and they try to make him look like this evil pirate type. You know, like you strapped with all this weaponry. He's got a machete. What did he ever have a machete in the film?
Yeah, no idea.
But the funny thing
Yeah,
about
yeah,
this, yeah,
they had Nick Van Owen, Eddie Carr. Like none of these guys I would ever really want to own as an action figure. Like I'm pretty sure Eddie Carr was the guy. Spoiler alert for like a 20 some odd year movie, but he got eaten and ripped apart by the two T Rex in the movie. I think that's him. And Nick Van Owen is the what's his face from Wedding Crashers.
yeah, Vince
Like,
Vaughn. I want to actually talk about that figure for a second.
yeah,
So, obviously, I had this toy as well, and he looked more like, you remember GI Joe had this line of eco warrior toys. You know, they're supposed to like
yeah,
protect the environment, and if you put water on them, then they have like these stains that they make. That's what this figure reminds me of. He's got like that yellow vest. He's got like a
I see
green
it.
hat. He has the same like water blasting thing like Dennis Nedry had. He even has a camera, and that camera is the same camera used in GI Joe from the character Scoop. So they took like that same accessory, repainted it, and added it to this character. Vince Vaughn, as I remember when this movie came out, you know, sometimes like they would have the actors actually take the figures and they would start making fun of them on TV. Even Wayne Knight, I remember, made fun of his Dennis Nedry toy. So Vince Vaughn in interviews was ragging on Kenner for not getting his likeness correct. He's like, I don't have a hat that looks nothing like me. You know, he was like really like upset about it, but trying to do it in a joking way. So when they did the second line, they redid his head, so he didn't have the hat. He had more like Vince Vaughn's hair and more of that square face of his, but still the same body mold and the same color. I mean, he had to be so annoyed about that.
Yeah, I mean, if that was me, I look at that, I go, you know, damn it, can't you just do something for me? Make it a little bit better. I want it to look like me.
I think to this day, that's the only Vince Vaughn figure in existence.
Yeah, that's probably not the happiest he'll ever be for that situation then.
And to be quite honest, how many movies has Vince Vaughn actually been in that would require an action figure?
This is probably the only one.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. It's literally this is it.
So I know that maybe this sounds a little bit, and this kind of goes back to what Marcos was saying earlier about, you know, the characters, you know, in this movie being ripped apart and stuff like that. I always thought it would have been really cool if the actual action figures would have broken in half. Like you have two dinosaurs, one grabbing him from like the head, and one grabbing him from the legs, and you pull them, and then bam, it comes apart in the middle. I know that's violent, and that's probably not why they didn't do it. But how cool would that be?
I definitely agree, and I'm right in the middle because as some the time is now a parent, I'm kind of like no, because the last thing I need is an action figure to be ripped apart. I was as soon as Andre mentioned the Dennis Nedry character's arms being pulled off, I just quickly read that it's cool because a dinosaur could attack him, and because he's the bad guy of the movie, you don't care. And it's kind of like that's scary. These guys' arms fall off, you know. But I'm definitely split in the middle. Like I would have loved that as a kid, but as a parent, definitely like, wow, don't really want that because that's violent. So I don't know. I'm split.
Fair enough.
Yeah, that could almost lead to a toy that I would have in mind that I wish they would have made. And I'll just say, if they had done like a little recreation of the lawyer getting eaten from the toilet bowl, that could be kind of cool to have.
Yes.
Yeah. All right, and maybe we're moving far ahead, but they should just do a Jurassic Park lawyer getting eaten vinyl pop. Let me just throw that one out there because I'm pretty sure people would actually buy that.
Oh, totally.
I guarantee it.
Now, were the dinosaurs really that memorable in this movie? Because the only ones I remember was the little baby T Rex that everybody was chasing after, and those little compies that kill off that one of the hunters.
I mean, at the very beginning, there are a bunch of stegosaurs that were supposed to be the that one brachiosaurus esque looking thing that like stands up in the first movie. That's like the ooh and ah moment when Malcolm Harding, Eddie Carr, and Nick Van Owen are first on the island, and they happen upon a group of them walking. That's what that was. Outside of that, the Raptors really didn't play that much of a role until towards the end, and they
Right.
were just like a throwaway dinosaur at that point. The T Rex definitely because it rampages through San Diego, not a whale's vagina.
I always thought that's what it meant.
Sorry. I actually Googled it, and nope, sorry, it can't be.
Well, thank you for letting me know.
But yeah, I mean, I think that because I was a little underwhelmed by the movie, I didn't really collect those figures all that much. They did sell off. I mean, they were a big success because the film was successful. But I just there was really not a lot of appeal because the characters weren't that memorable. And yeah, I mean, other than a few couple of scenes like the thing with the mobile center being hung down on the off the cliff, and yeah, the ending of the T-Rex attacking San Diego, there really wasn't too much else that I would say, okay, I gotta go get these toys right away. And I think Kenner realized that because when they decided to continue with the line, they took another step further from that those Dino Raider figures that they did in the first set. So the next set that they did was Jurassic Park Chaos Effect. And this is
I do
almost
remember them.
yeah, they must have been on drugs of some sort because what they did was they took these same characters from Lost World and now they look very cartoonish. They had Ian Malcolm.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ian Malcolm looked nothing like Jeff Goldblum now. They give him like this yellow suit, which they call Dinometch armor. And they have one of the bad guy hunters who also has like this armored suit and a grappling hook and all kinds of stuff. Um, Repainted the mobile command center, repainted all the dinosaurs to look multicolored and they're supposed to glow in the dark, and they have all these weird stripes on their bodies. And I'm sorry, I have to read the description of this because it is just freaking hilarious. Scientific tampering with dinosaur genetics has created a dangerous new breed of predator, struggling to piece together the lost genetic puzzle that brought the original dinosaurs of Jurassic Park to life. Scientists began experimenting with the DNA of dinosaurs, mixing their genes with those of other dinosaur species and even modern day animals. The result: ultra ferocious hybrid dinosaurs, the most aggressive predators ever, wrecking chaos on an unsuspected world. I can't even read the rest of it. It's just hilarious.
That's great. It's so
I don't know if it
it's
was
so funny.
drugs or just large amounts of caffeine that led to that description.
A combination of both.
Yeah, a combination of both, I would say. And then I would read later on that apparently, yes, this was planned for a cartoon series. And Hasbro, which at this point had absorbed Kenner, they were actually funding this cartoon. So the whole concept was theirs to do this, and they just didn't go further with that. And you could tell because the sales dropped off dramatically at this point for the Jurassic Park line.
Yeah, and you can tell why. I mean, look, everybody I think was very excited. I think it was, I think it was fun to go back. I think the dinosaurs were, it's always cool to get more dinosaurs if you're collecting these. But I think as the movies kind of got less appealing, so did the toy lines, just because people weren't, clamoring for this anymore. The first movie was great, and then, after that, I think just the idea of it kind of, unless you were a diehard, kind of trickled down a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, the same has to be said for Jurassic Park 3, which in some ways I thought was just a tad bit better than Lost World because they brought back Alan Grant, and right away Hasbro had to go and make new Alan Grant figures and new dinosaurs, new characters. Um, they made the figures a lot smaller, so now they were the size of the Star Wars action figures because that was obviously still the big seller with the prequels that were out. Um,
Even though they came out with draft.
yeah, and they were strange. I mean, the Grant figure, it looked a lot like Sam Neill again, but they kind of like muscled him up. That was kind of a awkward kind of thing. They even have a William H. Macy figure where it almost looks close to him, but not exact. It looks more like the guy that plays General Hux in The Force Awakens.
Oh my God! Yeah, thinking about it now, you're kind of right.
Yeah,
And I'm pretty sure that like the Nick Van Owen toy, that's William H Macy's only action figure.
oh, you mean what's his name? Oh no, not Eric Kirby. I know his last Paul Kirby was his name. And again, these were like annoying characters that didn't need action figures. To be honest, they didn't do
And
anything in the film.
The wife had a toy too. Amanda Kirby.
Yeah, she had a
The
figure.
hell were they trying
So
to
weird.
do? And you know what? Jurassic Park 3 would be the one instance out of the original 3 movies that I would have said create additional character toys for this one. Like, forget about these boring characters. We don't need these. Go a little crazier. Let's talk more about the guys who they hired to get them there. Because those guys were dead really early on, but they were probably the most interesting of the bunch outside of Alan Grant.
I'm even looking at the dinosaurs now too, and it seemed like they also started playing down the scale of the figures. What was the big dinosaur baddie of the movie, if you remember?
Spinosaurus?
Yeah, the Spinosaurus. The Spinosaurus is almost like the size of the regular action figures. It's not even anything bigger than the T-Rex.
Yeah, and we talk about this all the time. The idea of scale, man. And I hate that. Like, if you're gonna do this kind of stuff, man, scale these things to size. I want these dinosaurs to look like they're humongous.
I see what you're saying. They did have a smaller Spinosaurus, but they did have a big one too.
Good.
But I definitely agree.
That makes the
I
other
definitely
one.
agree that
Yeah, it makes the other one irrelevant.
Yeah, it just. I mean, I wasn't even collecting any of these figures at this point, but even for me, I would say that that's not even realistic. And then they were still repainting old dinosaurs that were not in the film, repackaging them. Again, it was like just like with Batman, where they were just remolding, recoloring the toys. And I would think that would affect sales because if you already had like a raptor from Lost World, why would you want to buy it again?
Yeah, then that goes back to what I was saying about the Transformers. I already have an Optimus Prime. Why would I want to buy a second one from the third movie, which sucked anyway? But regardless, my kid's probably going to want it. And now they're on the fifth movie, and apparently they're making a sixth one that's still continuing, regardless of the fact that they kind of rebooted it with Bumblebee. I digress in a different direction, but
yeah.
Yeah, now...
Sorry, I just needed to think for a hot second.
Of course. When Jurassic World came out, now this was a decade later, and it was a massive hit, even though critically the reception was mixed on it. There were no action figures for this one, interestingly enough. But the dinosaurs, I guess they did kind of sell to a degree because of Chris Pratt's character's little pet raptors, Blue, Delta, Charlie, Echo, and they proved to be very popular. I mean, you've seen like drawings of them, like almost like Ninja Turtle style raptors and, Ghostbuster style raptors. So that probably stood out, but it was weird. Like they didn't really have any of the human characters at first. Just like maybe these small little tiny workers that you have like a submarine that comes with that whale figure and a pterodactyl with a helicopter and a helicopter pilot. So it was very general and just like capitalizing not on the humans, but just on the dinosaurs themselves. But then with the recent film, Fallen Kingdom, now we had all the human characters plus recreations of the characters from the original films. Mattel had at this point taken over the license away from Hasbro. So now they were not only going crazy with the dinosaurs again, but they were starting to go crazy over Chris Pratt's Owen Grady character. They even gave him a doll because he's so popular. So I think that was kind of like an interesting thing where I guess maybe the demand was there for a Chris Pratt toy who wasn't Star-Lord, but actually like a badass human character in a Jurassic Park movie.
I mean, I can speak to the Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom toys because I bought Miles a big T Rex that you push a button and it opens its mouth, and I've also bought him Blue. And right around when Fallen Kingdom came out in Target, they had this big giant T Rex uh, cardboard cutout, which Andre, I can send a picture to you because I literally stopped in my tracks when I saw it. Like I don't know what I was thinking, but there was a quick moment of fear of like what just happened. Okay, it's not real. And you walk by it, and the thing let out a big giant roar. Um, I mean, I was disappointed when they got rid of it, but it it led you right to the toy aisle where the Jurassic World were, and they had Owen Grady and a bunch of the dinosaurs from Jurassic World, Jurassic Park. But they also had some classic toys too. Like they had the old Jurassic Park Jeep. They had Grant, and while like you mentioned Muldoon from the first movie, they also had a Jurassic World Legends figure for Robert Muldoon. So I'm assuming that they had a whole line of like they just put out original characters as well along with Jurassic World. So um, yeah, like
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at them now, and I would even say like the likeness to how they looked in those films way better than what Kenner did. I mean, massive improvement, even just down to their costumes.
oh, agreed. They put a little bit more love behind what they were doing. They weren't just putting toys out; they were putting things that the kids would remember and they would be able to like, oh, I saw this in the movie, and be able to like play with it as opposed to uh, the colored versions that they had towards the later '90s with the Chaos Effect toys.
Right. And I know there's like obviously there were other lines that they kind of filled in to fill in the gaps between movies, but there's really no reason to get into them because a lot of them were just re-releases and repaints. So as we're wrapping this up, usually, like I said, at the end, we like to talk about the toys that we wish we had that didn't get made at the time. And, like I said, I would have liked to have seen a Samuel Jackson figure from that first
Yeah.
movie and have him come with the play set of the compound. And I would have liked to have seen the lawyer character from that movie just so I could have him get eaten by a T Rex on a toilet. What do you guys want?
Always.
John Hammond toy?
Yeah, John Hammond, another one I forgot to mention. John Hammond with the cane and the hat and the white suit.
And the cane.
Of course.
Yeah.
And that was the thing that the cane became like iconic in that movie, and there was no toy representation of it.
There was even a costume prop for it that you could buy in like a Halloween store.
You know what else would have been cool? The Jurassic Park gate. But I think that would have been cool to have that. Like, you can drive the Jeep through the gate and into the park. I mean, like thinking about it as like a kid, I think if like you definitely would have enjoyed that whole progression of like you're taking your unsuspecting Ghostbusters and Ninja Turtle toys and wrestling toys and taking them into a park where they will eventually get eaten. I mean, that's like I mean, I'm pretty sure that's right up Albert's alley right there.
You are 100% right.
All right, so that's it for us today, guys. As always, you can follow us on the Silver Screen Action Figure Podcast, on our Twitter page at Silver Screen AF1, and we also have our Facebook page for all updates, news, and every now and then like to give some trivia about some of the topics that we discussed. And then, always follow me at AJ Epics on Twitter for all my movie updates and the AJ Epics Productions website. You guys go ahead. Albert, you go ahead and plug your podcast.
So, guys, if you would be so kind, go to youtube.com and search for the Slam Sessions live stream. You'll see all my stuff. If you give it a like and a share, and just watch a couple of them, and always go to facebook.com/the Slam Sessions Podcast Network and tell us what you'd like to hear us cover on the next episode.
All right, now,
and
the big announcement, Marcos.
Don't forget to subscribe to either of them as well.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, Marcos, you have a big announcement to make.
Definitely go check out Coast Blog. It's you can get to it at coastblog.coastmellentertainment.com. Andre, please just add that somewhere in your description here. You can also follow Coast Blog on Twitter at coastblog, or you can also follow me at Marcos Cosme1, both on Twitter or on Instagram, mcoast128.
All right, guys. So this was a fun one, and we got plenty more to talk about for the next episode. So until then, this is Andre Joseph signing off, and I will see you